Today, we will continue to recognize significant historical events. I have prepared for you 10 facts, some of them related to inventions, some of them related to moments that dramatically changed history. Moreover, they influenced our society. Make yourself comfortable and let's travel through time together. The American Declaration of Independence in 1776 is a foundational document of the United States, both historically and philosophically. Here's a breakdown of its key aspects. The main purpose is to formally declare the independence of the 13 colonies from Great Britain. The historical context of the event were drafted in 1776 during the American Revolutionary War. Explain the reasons for the colonies' decision to secede from British rule. So, what was the key message? First, self-evident truths. All men are created equal and endowed with inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Second, just powers of government. Government derives its power from the consent of the governed. Third, the right of revolution. The people have the right to change or abolish a government that becomes destructive to those ends. What was the impact of the Declaration of Independence? Although the Declaration is not legally binding, it is a powerful statement of American ideals. It has influenced revolutions and independence movements around the world. Primarily, Declaration was written by Thomas Jefferson, with contributions from Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Robert R. Livingston, and Roger Sherman. The Declaration's ideas continue to be debated and interpreted, but its role in shaping American identity remains significant. Let's talk about Waterloo Battle. The battle took place on June 18, 1815 at Waterloo, now in Belgium. The participants: French army under Napoleon versus 7th Coalition forces, British-led army under Duke of Wellington, and Prussian army under Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher. Why is this event significant in history? First, end of the Napoleonic Wars marked the decisive defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte, ending his attempts to dominate Europe and ending the Napoleonic Wars, which had raged for more than 2 decades. Second, Napoleon's exile forced Napoleon to abdicate the French throne for the second and final time, leading to his exile on St. Helena until his death in 1821. Third, change of power. A new era of European politics began when the Congress of Vienna established a balance of power among European nations. Briefly about the course of the battle. The battle was bloody and lasted all day, inflicting heavy casualties on both sides. At first, it seemed that Napoleon was gaining the upper hand over Wellington's forces. However, the arrival of Prussian troops under Blücher greatly strengthened the Allied forces, which eventually tipped the scales in their favor. The French army was defeated, leading to a decisive Allied victory. The Battle of Waterloo remains one of the most famous and significant battles in history. It marked the end of an era and reshaped the political landscape of Europe. The battle continues to be studied and analyzed by historians and military strategists, providing valuable insights into the dynamics of warfare and the complexities of leadership. The publication of Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species is a landmark event in scientific history. The publication saw the world on November 24, 1859. Full title of the publication: On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Why is this article so important to the history of science? Proposed the theory of evolution by natural selection, which revolutionized our understanding of the living world. He suggested that all species gradually evolved from earlier forms through the process of natural selection. This challenged the dominant view of creationism and sparked a scientific and cultural debate that continues today. Let's look at the document in more detail. Darwin's ideas were based on his observations during his voyage on the ship Beagle and subsequent research. The concept of natural selection suggested that organisms with traits best suited to their environment had a better chance of surviving and reproducing, passing these traits on to future generations. This gradual process over a vast amount of time could lead to the formation of new species. Impact of the event. The book on the origin of species has had a profound impact on biology, geology, and other scientific fields. Its influence has gone beyond science to shape philosophy, religion, and social thought. Although at first controversial, the theory of evolution by natural selection is now widely recognized as a cornerstone of modern biology. The Emancipation Proclamation was a pivotal document in American history, issued by President Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War. The Proclamation of Independence freed enslaved people in Confederate states. The proclamation declared that all persons held as slaves in rebellious states were free and henceforth shall be free. It did not apply to slaves in border states that remained loyal to the Union. What is interesting is that it is not possible to give a single date for the document, for it was formed on more than one day. On September 22, 1862, a preliminary Emancipation Proclamation was issued, setting the date of January 1, 1863, the day when enslaved people in the rebellious states would be considered free. The final version of the Emancipation Proclamation was issued on January 1, 1863, as a follow-up to the preliminary proclamation. Why is this event so important? First, a turning point in the Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation transformed the Civil War from a struggle to preserve the Union to a war to abolish slavery. It had a significant impact on the Union war effort, allowing enslaved people to join the fight for their freedom. Second, moral and military boost for the Union. The proclamation provided international support for the Union and weakened the Confederate position. It also allowed enslaved people to join the Union Army, which provided additional labor. The document applied only to territories under Confederate control, not to border states or slave areas that joined the Union. The Emancipation Proclamation was a critical step towards the eventual abolition of slavery in the United States with the passage of the 13th Amendment in 1865. The Suez Canal's completion was a significant feat of engineering and had a major impact on global trade. Here's what you might find interesting. The Suez Canal officially opened for navigation on November 17, 1869. Construction started in 1859, facing challenges like labor disputes and a cholera outbreak, leading to a 4-year delay. French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps played a crucial role. He formed the Company de Suez in 1858 specifically to undertake this project. The canal revolutionized trade routes between Europe and Asia. By providing a direct water passage between the Mediterranean and Red Seas, it significantly reduced travel times and costs compared to the route around Africa. This greatly boosted global trade volumes. The Suez Canal remains one of the world's most important shipping lanes. Even today, a significant portion of global trade passes through this vital waterway. If you don't want to miss the next video, subscribe to the channel to get tons of interesting facts every day. World War I, also known as the Great War, began on June 28, 1914, though tensions had been simmering in Europe for years prior. Here's a breakdown of the key events that triggered the war. First, the assassination. The spark that ignited the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo by Gavrilo Princip, a Bosnian Serb nationalist. Second, Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia for the assassination and issued a harsh ultimatum with a short deadline for Serbia to comply. Serbia partially agreed to the demands, But Austria-Hungary saw this as insufficient and declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914. Third, alliance system pulls in other nations. Europe had a complex web of alliances, and these now came into play. Russia, allied with Serbia, mobilized its army in response to Austria-Hungary's aggression. Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia on August 1, 1914, and on France, Russia's ally, 2 days later. Britain, allied with France and Russia, declared war on Germany on August 4, 1914. Additional points to consider. Long-term causes. While the assassination was the immediate trigger, deeper tensions had been building for years. These included nationalism, militarism, imperialism, and competition between European powers. Global conflict. What started as a regional conflict in Europe quickly escalated into a global war. Countries in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East were all drawn into the fighting. The war dragged on for 4 brutal years, ending on November 11, 1918, with the signing of the Armistice Agreement. It left a devastating impact on the world, with millions of casualties and a reshaped geopolitical landscape. The Russian Revolution wasn't a single event, but rather a period of intense political and social upheaval in 1917 that toppled the Tsarist regime and led to the rise of communism. Here's a breakdown of the key events. Well, where did it all begin? Long-standing discontent. For decades, discontent had been simmering in Russia. The Tsars ruled with absolute power, poverty and inequality were rampant, and the country suffered humiliating defeats in wars. Failed revolution of 1905. The previous attempted revolution of 1905, sparked by the Bloody Sunday massacre of peaceful protesters, led to some reforms but failed to address the underlying problems. The 2 revolutions of 1917. February Revolution. March by Gregorian calendar, food shortages, and war weariness fueled massive protests in Petrograd, St. Petersburg, in February 1917. The Tsar abdicated, ending the Tsarist monarchy. A provisional government took power, but it struggled to address the people's needs. October Revolution. November by Gregorian calendar, the Bolsheviks, a communist faction led by Vladimir Lenin, promised peace, land, and bread, ending World War I, land redistribution, and improved living conditions. They seized power in a coup d'état in October 1917. What were the aftermath of the revolution? Civil war. The Bolsheviks faced opposition from other socialist groups and supporters of the Tsarist regime. A brutal civil war began, lasting from 1918 to 1923, which eventually led to the Bolsheviks' consolidation of power. Formation of the Soviet Union. The Bolsheviks renamed themselves the Communists and created the world's first communist state, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR. Key figures of the revolution. Tsar Nicholas II, Russia's last Tsar, whose abdication marked the end of the monarchy. Vladimir Lenin, Bolshevik leader and architect of the October Revolution. Leon Trotsky, prominent Bolshevik leader who played a key role in the Red Army's victory in the Civil War. To summarize, the Russian Revolution, which included a series of events that took place from 1917 to the early 1920s, was a turning point in Russian and world history. It led to the fall of Tsarist autocracy and the creation of the Soviet Union, the world's first communist state. The Wall Street crash of 1929, also known as the Great Crash or Crash of '29, was a pivotal moment in American history, triggering the Great Depression. Here's a comprehensive breakdown. Before the crash, there was a period better known as the Roaring Twenties. The 1920s was a period of economic prosperity in the United States. Stock prices soared, fueled by speculation and easy access to credit. Many people, even those with little experience, invested heavily in the stock market. What were the main problems? First things first. Unsustainable stock prices. Stock prices became increasingly inflated and disconnected from the underlying value of companies. This led to the formation of a bubble that was about to burst. Second, easy credit and margin buying. Brokers allowed investors to buy stocks on margin, using borrowed funds to pay a percentage of the purchase price. This increased profits, but it also increased losses when the market turned. Let's take a closer look at the crash itself. Black Thursday, October 24th, 1929, the collapse began with a massive sell-off in stocks on Thursday, October 24th, which was the largest one-day drop in history up to that point. Investors began to panic and hastily sell their stocks, causing prices to fall even further. Black Tuesday, October 29th, 1929, the following Tuesday, October 29th, another massive sell-off occurred, solidifying the crash. More than 16 million shares were sold that day, a record that stood for decades. The Wall Street crash triggered the Great Depression, the worst economic downturn in American history. Unemployment soared, businesses collapsed, and poverty became widespread. The Depression's effects rippled throughout the world. The crash had long-term effects. Regulation and reform. The crash led to tighter regulation of Wall Street and the stock market to prevent similar disasters. Measures included margin requirements and the creation of the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. Psychological impact. The crash left a deep scar in American society. It created distrust of the stock market and fear of risky investments. The bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, was a pivotal event that propelled the United States into World War II. Here's a closer look at this critical moment in history. On a Sunday morning, Japanese fighter planes launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Honolulu, Hawaii. The Japanese aimed to cripple the U.S. Pacific Fleet and prevent American intervention in their expansion plans in Asia. The attack was devastating. Over 350 Japanese aircraft struck in two waves, sinking or damaging numerous battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and other vessels. More than 2,400 American service members were killed, and over 1,100 were wounded. Tensions had been simmering between the U.S. and Japan for years. Japan's aggression in Asia, including the invasion of Manchuria and China, clashed with American interests in the Pacific. The U.S. imposed economic sanctions on Japan in an attempt to curb its expansion. Diplomatic negotiations between the U.S. and Japan to resolve the conflicts failed. The U.S. demanded Japan withdraw from China, which Japan refused. President Franklin D. Roosevelt declared December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The following day, the U.S. formally declared war on Japan. This act ultimately brought the U.S. into World War II, which had been raging in Europe and Asia since 1939. The bombing of Pearl Harbor significantly altered the course of World War II. It united American public opinion behind the war effort and mobilized the U.S. to become a major force against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor remains a powerful symbol of the suddenness and brutality of warfare. It serves as a reminder of the importance of preparedness and vigilance in a world of international conflict. The D-Day Normandy landings, codenamed Operation Overlord, were a critical turning point in World War II. Here's a detailed breakdown of this momentous event. The invasion of Normandy, France, by Allied forces took place on D-Day, June 6, 1944. It marked the opening of a second front in Europe against Nazi Germany and the beginning of the liberation of Northwest Europe. The D-Day landings were part of a meticulously planned operation codenamed Operation Overlord. It involved meticulous planning by Allied commanders, including Dwight D. Eisenhower, U.S. Supreme Allied Commander, Bernard Montgomery, British Ground Forces Commander, and George Patton, U.S. Third Army Commander. The operation faced immense challenges. Landing troops on heavily fortified beaches under enemy fire was a daunting task. Deception and weather forecasting played crucial roles. The operation hinged on complex coordination between air, sea, and land forces. Allied forces landed on 5 beaches along the Normandy coast, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. American, British, and Canadian troops participated in the invasion. German forces fiercely defended the beaches, inflicting heavy casualties on the Allies. Omaha Beach, in particular, witnessed intense fighting. Despite the initial difficulties, Allied forces secured footholds on all 5 beaches by the end of D-Day. This marked a significant victory for the Allies. The D-Day landings were merely the first step in a long and hard-fought campaign to liberate France. The Battle of Normandy raged for over 2 months, with heavy casualties on both sides. D-Day proved to be a pivotal moment in World War II. It opened a Western front against Germany, forcing them to fight a war on 2 fronts. This eventually led to the liberation of France and the eventual defeat of Nazi Germany. That's all for today. Hope you enjoy this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to learn even more science facts. See you next time.